straightforward question. It began my decision around the beginning of the pandemic to take a deeper dive into my history, given that I'm nearing the end of my life. And I started to write about some unusual experiences that I've had. And the more I wrote, the more came back to me. Well, I had quite a few of them. And I realized that one of the things that had happened, probably because of my overdeveloped intellectual part uh, during my life and over reliance on it, was that I had compartmentalized these. These were events that I had no logical, rational explanation for. And as a trained scientist, I had no place to put them. So I got to put them on a mental shelf somewhere in the back of my head. But they were always there, but I did not realize the extent. So I laid them out in a chronological order, and I was beginning to think about doing something, a deeper exploration of this. I saw within this a thread that I'd been following since I was very young, and that is an attraction to mystery. I don't mean, detective whodunits. I mean, why are we here? What is this about? How can any of this be possible? And I realized when I looked at this collection of experiences from when I was maybe 3 years old up until now, that it did seem as if I had been following a trail of breadcrumbs throughout my life, and that the pole star was throbbing underneath all of my search was mystery, and that I would orient towards that. And as I was writing this, it occurred to me that there was another project that I've been thinking about for many years. I've been advised and heard advised in many spiritual traditions that at some point, in order to have a sense of where you are in your own development, you should try and recreate this system through your own examples and your own understanding. Most of the work that I've seen about in the great traditions is a rehash over and over again for centuries by the adherents of different disciplines to put in their own words, or rather to repeat the words of the great teacher, would have sometimes give explanations for things. But I felt it was critically important for me to put it in my own words and my own language. Now, this created a problem immediately because not only Gurdjieff, but many others, but particularly Gurdjieff, has such a focus on the relativity of language. And that just because we all speak, say, English or French or Russian, or a group you belong to, and we're familiar with those words, that we understand what they mean. But words can have many different meanings, depending on the idiosyncratic experiences and conditioning of the person using them. One of the reasons Gurdjieff wrote in such difficult language, particularly in Beelzebub's Tales, was to try and help people get out of their conditioned thinking about what things meant. So I was faced with this dilemma because one of the ongoing problems in all traditions, and Gurdjieff spells this out very clearly in his writings, is that within a generation or two after the passing of the teacher, the disciples, in all sincerity and sometimes under the influence of personality and egoism, will start to argue about what different things meant. And then eventually this leads to different sects. And so to tamper with the words and the examples of the master or the essence of the tradition is to risk distorting it is a terrible burden. But on the other hand, Gurdjieff also says that a tradition that doesn't change over time, in some respects, is will be dead. That particular methods are brought at particular times in history for certain groups of people in their language, their metaphors, their allegories, their parables, something they can understand. So in this current age, particularly in the industrialized and mechanized and now technologically advanced, scientifically oriented Western mind, what is going to speak to them? You know, shepherds and visions in the sky and that kind of stuff doesn't speak that well to modern people. So it has to be changed. But how to do that? Well, this is where Jung as well as Gurdjieff was very useful to me, because they clearly demonstrated and were aware of the utility of story and parable to not always directly say what something means, but to give examples through myth and through stories. And I saw that for myself, my own desire to recreate what I've been given from these two traditions, particularly Gurdjieff, was going to require that I find my own personal material. So I started writing and free associating to various topics, and I realized after a while that I was, at least to my own satisfaction, recreating the essence of what I've been given through my experience as an individual man, and also through over 40 years as a psychologist and psychotherapist. One of the things I wanted to achieve when I saw how this was unfolding, because people will often say, well, who's your audience for this? Well, so my first audience was myself. But then I realized that I was really speaking to people similar to me who feel a call to mystery as their particular path. There are many, many ways to approach these huge questions. But the questions themselves point to mystery. And I'm hopeful that I've written in a way that is conversational. I wanted to create an atmosphere in the book similar to the conversation we're having now, where the reader and I are sitting in two easy chairs, having a cup of tea, or maybe a glass of sherry, and we're sharing. So I'm sharing my experiences, and I'm hoping that I've written it in a way that invites the reader. And I'm very specific. The invitation's very specific in the book in many places. You know, dear reader, if you're interested, try this, try that. I want to invite the reader into looking inside themselves and experimenting in different ways, different perspectives of looking at their own stories, their own histories. And that maybe if they're the type of person for whom this search appeals, this particular kind of search, that they will then begin to explore their own story using my examples only as suggestions or guide for themselves. Nobody can do anyone else's work. Nobody can follow in my path. I've been having enough trouble trying to discern my path for myself. But I hope that I've retained the essence of these two great methods in transformational depth psychology that can point the way to direct experiences that demonstrate the reality of a deeper reality, to be redundant, that is actually directly accessible to us. I also know that for a long time, both as a scientifically trained person and someone with a deep spiritual orientation, that Gurdjieff's appeal to find a way to bring the wisdom of the East to the intellectual understanding of the West was an invitation to me to find a way to have a cooperative relationship between my intellect and my feelings.